Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Family by Design. Liz and I had a really good time recording this podcast, and we titled this, Don't Let Your Kids Become an Educated Idiot. We certainly don't want to be offensive to anybody, but we're really making a point concerning this. So tune in, listen, and you're going to be really blessed concerning this topic of really helping your kids have some life skills. So be blessed as you listen. Here we are. We're going to talk about something that Liz doesn't like the term, but I'm going to use it, and it's the word idiot. And we're going to say, this is the title of this podcast, Don't Let Your Child Become an Educated Idiot.
Did you
and
really?
We titled it that way for clickbait. I'll just be honest with you. If you're listening to this, you're like, I want to know what these people are talking about. Well, here you are. But we have a great point with this.
Very great.
Yes, because there is a huge push in our education system in America to educate your kids in particular ways, but not in other ways. You know, back in the day, like in public schools in particular, people were doing things like, you know, finance classes and like home ec, different things that they would actually use. You know, how to balance your checkbook, things like that.
What's a checkbook?
We have whatever. So today we have kids that are being trained to know and have all this knowledge and, you know, the sciences and mathematics and English and whatever, but many of them don't actually know basic things in life and have basic life skills, which is why one of the reasons why we love homeschooling, and we don't push homeschooling like it's Bible doctrine. We've met a lot of people that they're like, if you're not homeschooling your kid, you're going to hell. Like, not really, but they almost push it that hard. We do not believe that. We support people in whatever decision they feel like they need to make with their kids. That is one reason why we do love homeschooling, is that we take education and we look at it in a less conventional way than what most people do. And a lot of where this conversation really started in my heart, just even like right now, is that I was talking to a dad the other day who's got little kids they're just starting to homeschool. And I was encouraging him, and I said, you know, the thing is I said, you do not feel like, you know, when people go to homeschool their kids, they feel like they need to, you know, if they're going to homeschool them, it's like, okay, well, they're at school for 7-8 hours. We got to do 7-8 hours of school. And that is not
wrong.
right. That is a system that the public education and even most private schools operate that way. And that is not necessarily what your child needs. Now, if you have a child that is advancing in like academically real strong, then maybe you push them that way real hard. But that is not every kid, and it certainly is not most kids.
Right.
And so you can educate your child in, you know, higher learning, but then completely avoid teaching them basic life skills. And that's the thing that we don't want to see. So if your kids are going to public school, it's fine, or even a private school, it's fine. You do what is good for you and your family.
Right.
But make sure you're not just giving them an education, but you're giving them common sense. You're teaching them how to communicate with people. One thing I can say there's things that I wish that our kids maybe knew more of or whatever, but I'm very happy with what the Lord has done through us in training our children up.
Because we basically have educated two, or I mean schooled, you know, two children.
Yeah, done schooling two of them, basically, yeah. But like our kids are very good at communicating with people.
They are very well.
They're excellent at doing that. Even the ones that aren't as great as communicating, you know, there's one of them in particular that his communication isn't the highest on his, you know, natural abilities, but he's still a good communicator. He can have a conversation with the people. He can
he's
pick up the phone
growing
and say, and he's growing in that. Yeah. And so the point is that there has to be some basic things that your kids know how to do. Like I remember a cousin of mine, he went all the way through school, and he is actually very, very brilliant. He's got a PhD probably in more than one thing. And he goes all the way through like college. And then I remember him telling me, he's like, I had to go buy car insurance. And he said, I didn't know how to do that because my mom always did that. And I'm thinking, why is this guy brilliant and has gone all the way, has all the schooling, but he literally didn't know how to go buy car insurance? It's because nobody taught him how to do some of those basic things. You don't want your kids, and I'm not saying he's an idiot, okay? So don't whatever. Don't anybody take that the wrong way. But we don't want to raise educated idiots. We don't want people to have all this book smarts and they have no street smarts. They have no common sense.
Right. I think that that's important. I know, especially for me particularly, that I was not I can say for sure, I was not a great communicator, nor did I have probably a lot of common sense. I have learned that since we have, been together and been married. You've had to teach me a lot of those things. And I think because of that, then I would say largely you have imparted those things into our children, or encouraged me to be like, we're going to teach our kids how to do this. Like, communication is so high on, even like to a core value standard of like, you're going to communicate and you're going to communicate well. And I want to know what you're thinking, and then make sure you're able to say what it is that you want to say, mean what you say, all those things. And I'm going to make sure that I understood what it is that you're saying. Like, clear communication and making sure that like there is even like effective closed end communication, like all around, is so important to you. And because of that, that has made me have to grow in it. And then our children are pretty good communicators. They're effective in their communication skills, but a lot of that is just also because we don't like talk lesser to them or down at them. Like, we initiate conversations, and
we don't talk down to our servants.
but we encourage. Like, we're a heavily communicative family, I would say.
This goes more than just clear communication as far as like, explaining what you're thinking or what you're going to do. Or it's also, there's a lot of things that are caught. And so it's not just verbal communication. It's also emotional communication. It's also body language. And it's, as a parent, learning how to navigate yourself, then being able to help navigate your children in that, because they're going to catch a lot. And when you have an adult that you see that is very raw emotionally, it's probably because they grew up with parents that were like up and down, up and down, up and down all the time, or one parent that was. Or if they were raised, and I've met quite a few families like this, to where they were raised with parents that didn't communicate verbally very well. It was like they had the caveman syndrome. It was like, how you doing? Hey, what's going on in your life? And maybe they get a little bit more advanced. They're like, not much. Okay, well, how are things going at your job? Pretty good. It's like there needs to be more communication than that, but that's just how they were raised. So they don't know any different. So this is broadening as a parent. We have to broaden our, we have to be authentic and say, how good am I at communicating, both nonverbal and verbal?
That's good. Mm-hmm.
And then, so where do I need to grow in this? And then what am I teaching my kids? Because if I come home and even though I'm a good communicator, I'm still a man.
True.
And I can come home and you can be like, hey, you're home. And I can be like, because that's men tend to be like that.
And then I want to ask you 20 million questions. Right. And by the end of the day, you're like, I don't want to talk anymore.
So my boys should watch me communicate well with you and answer you well. And I think they have seen that. They've also seen some of the caveman grunting stuff, like just I'm done for the day. And then of course, and girls can also watch their moms and be like, okay, maybe when I get married, I shouldn't ask my husband 45 questions before he even gets
it's just
his feet
like
in the door. Girl thing. I know, that's just how women are. So there's just learning through all those things. But going back to the core of what we're talking about here is that we don't want to raise our kids up to not know some real basic life skills.
Yeah, like common sense things.
And here's the thing. You can, and I say this often, if you are leaving the education of your child up to the school system, you're doing a terrible disservice to your child.
Right.
And parents have almost come into this, and the government loves this, by the way. School systems love this. They've almost completely come in, and parents, and have taken all of their responsibility and push it over onto the school system, be it public or private. have like, well, they're gonna train my kid. No, they're gonna give your kids some education on some things concerning, math, science, history, those kind of things. And that's fine. That's great. But when it comes to how they're functioning in life,
Right.
you can have all kinds of knowledge and be a complete goofball in talking to people. Have no idea how to balance a checkbook. Have no idea. There are so many women that are brilliant, that have all this education. They don't know how to cook a meal.
It's true.
Of course, we got a bunch of leftist idiots saying like, well, it's, women just being home and cooking meals. They should do more. It's like, what is a greater honor than to be able to birth a human out of you and then to feed that human from your own body? How is that lesser than going and working a job?
Right.
That's
It's
actually
not.
like one of the greatest honors you can have.
Right.
And so anyways, our society's all twisted up. But the deal is that we have to be able to take the responsibility for how our kids are being trained and make sure that no matter what education they're getting, make sure that they're not being, and sticking with our title, they're not idiots.
Right.
They're not walking through life totally blind on how to go about doing things properly.
So what would you say are some real common sense stuff? Obviously, whether male or female, knowing how to cook, I think
First
is
of all, knowing that there's a difference between male and female.
Right,
Let's start
okay.
there.
But knowing how to cook, everybody should know how to cook, period. You want to feed yourself, you should be able to know how to cook a meal. What are some...
You're talking about male or female?
Yeah, like practical things. If you say, I want you, we often say like, I'm teaching my child to be a well-rounded person who attributes to society. So what does that look like in having common sense? Like what are some traits that you're like, well, you're saying people don't know how to do or see, and they just are like, oblivious to some things that you should normally know that are common sense.
Yeah, so I think some
us.
things would be, I don't think the cooking thing is that big a deal personally, but you don't have any girls and you have all boys, so you probably feel that way.
They all can cook,
I think manners, which I actually, this is probably one area where we've fallen a little bit short of, because we just probably have, but we have, there's table manners, there's door holding manners, there's conversation manners.
Yes.
Yeah.
What are conversation
Chivalry
manners?
has died a little bit in our marriage,
bit.
I'll admit. I don't do as good going and opening the door for you as
But
I
our boys
should.
actually are very good at doing that.
Not going and opening the car door, but opening... Oh, okay. I'm getting feedback.
Yes.
Okay. Well, yeah, you ain't... Oh, yeah, you're not married yet, so just wait. That dies out. They're like,
I don't think so.
Anyways, wonderful. Good for you guys. I'm sorry I don't live up to that. But just some basic things. So like being serious, going back to this, some basic things like when you're walking through a door, you shouldn't let that slam on somebody's face if you can hold it. Obviously, if there's a line of 100 people, maybe you don't stand there and hold it for everybody. But there's just some common courtesy things. And as a matter of fact, just the other day, and both of, I think it was my two older boys were sitting in the truck, and there was a guy, as I was walking out, there was a cart thing right there by the door, and he was trying to pull a cart out, and the other one was pulling with him. I just reached up and grabbed the other cart and pushed it back in to help him, and it definitely helped him. The guy didn't even look at me, acknowledge, say anything, and I got in the car, and I was like, "You're welcome." And obviously when someone helps you, you just say, "Oh, well, thank you so much." Right? There's just common courtesy things that we're supposed to do. And this guy was older. He should have known better, but just some people weren't raised like that. And we need to raise our kids like that.
Even eye contact, I think, is
eye contact
so
is a big deal.
Vital.
Yeah.
Like when you're communicating with somebody or acknowledging that people are in the room, making eye contact with them is so important. And so we should teach our children to do that. So one important thing, especially as your kids are younger, then you should get down to their eye level when you're talking to them and look them in the eye so that they, that becomes, like you said, something then that is caught and, not necessarily taught. So that's...
So there's lots of things, how to introduce yourself, how to actually have a conversation with somebody. You talk to most people and all they do, I have a family member that does this. The only thing they do is talk about themselves. And that's how most people are. They're like, my kid's this, my dog this, my job this, blah, blah, blah. And that's fine. I mean, that's part of having a conversation that you will talk about yourself, but that's all you do. It's like, where is the skill in communicating with people? If you want to get to know somebody, ask questions about their life. You know, what brought you to this town? Or, you know, why did you come to this church? Or how did you meet your spouse? You know, how many children do you have and what are their names? Like you could just ask all these questions that teach you how to have some conversation with people. There's lots of life skills. You could just call it life skills. And the tough thing about this is that a lot of people, we have generations. So like we're millennials, and a lot of the baby boomers, which would have been our parents, your parents were probably a little younger than baby boomers, but they were like old Generation X maybe.
Yeah.
My parents were definitely baby boomers, but that generation kind of in there, they didn't parent real well as a whole. So a lot of millennials, which are the ones that we're speaking to a lot because they're having children.
Right.
They're at the age where they're having kids. The idea of like these kind of life skills is a little bit foreign on average to millennials and definitely Gen Zers. Like, it's like, well, why do I even need to do that? And we've lost the ability of having really good human interaction. And I
think that's actually the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Human
and this is
interaction.
what life skills will do for you. And it goes beyond that. It's not just about communication and interacting with people, but it does go into things concerning handling your finances. This is something to where, and we love our parents, we're honoring, but neither one of our parents were strong in this. And we had to learn how to handle finances, how to look at things, how to save money, how to invest money.
Just to even have a philosophy develop philosophy.
That's
around
right. Like,
money.
how are you looking at money? How are you thinking about money? Those kind of things. Those were questions that we didn't have posed to us that we had to go and begin to ask ourselves those things. So all of these life skills that are important, and you can find people that they'll learn things occupationally, whether they're going into something that is an education profession, like a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant or something like that. There's that, and then you have people that learn trades, and you'll find this to be true with both of those people. Educated people tend to be a little bit better on the communication aspect, but they miss a lot of the other basic life skills. And you'll find a lot of like tradespeople sometimes are not like I know this with a lot of tradesmen because I have and do work with a lot of them, and most of them have the grunting syndrome. Like they do not know how to shake hands and do things like that. The reason I had a business that I was not like some amazing tool guy to where I was so great at using a drill and hanging draperies. I was nice to people. I knew how to communicate with people, and I could have, if I'd stayed in that business, I could have been making for a drapery installer mega bucks, really great, because they were willing to pay for it. Because you can't just hire a carpenter and then come in and do that job, because that carpenter doesn't know how to be in people's homes properly. The average carpenter, say, right? But would be way more skilled than me. So there's more to making money and more to having favor with people in this life than just getting an education or learning a trade. It's learning how to actually deal with people, how to communicate with people, how to be around them, how to have proper, etiquette. I remember one thing that you used to do that drove me insane, and I've had to learn to just, be more gracious. But we would go to somebody's house, and you would be like, where's your bathroom? And it just sounded very like, why can't you ask that properly? So I remember having to tell you,
wow,
can you
that
please?
Is super nitpicky.
I know, but I'm like, that's not the proper way to walk into someone's house that you've never met and ask them to use their bathroom. You just simply need to say, may I use your restroom? Not, where's your bathroom? It was just really awkward and weird. And so, but
I'm trying to think right now if I still do that.
I don't know. I don't think you do.
I think I say, may I use your restroom?
Yeah,
I
and that's
still
how
might
you
say,
do
where's
that.
your restroom?
Yeah, well, you should ask
like
more politely. But it was just kind of like
that is so strange.
It's already awkward to walk into someone's house you don't know and be like, I need to go in and use your restroom. But it was more awkward to be like, where's your restroom? And for those of you that can't see, I'm like kind of pointing. And so just some basic things like that.
Why anybody would care
I'll pick on you. You also put your like elbows on the table, which I'm sure that I do that. I definitely do at our house. But, and then the way that, like, you didn't use utensils, you didn't put a napkin on your lap, and we'd be at, maybe a nicer dinner or something. And I felt like I pulled my wife out of the trailer park and brought her there to have a nice meal. So I had to show you some of those things. Woo! The looks I'm getting right now.
Wow.
Oh,
If you
man.
could see, my mouth was completely open.
Come
I
on,
will
you know
say
this is true.
I was not the
You know this is true.
greatest at etiquette. That's true. I will say that. And I only know that to be true because for the very first parts of our relationship, you told me all the time and you were not gracious about it.
I know I wasn't.
But thank God I still love you and I got over it.
I'm more
And
gracious about things now.
yes, you
I
are
really am.
way, except for maybe one particular thing. But yes, in
We'll
general.
talk about that later. I don't know what you're talking about.
Just crunching. You don't like eating food, like whatever. Anyway,
Well, listen, if I'm sitting there relaxing, I don't want somebody with a bag of pretzels in my ear.
and my mouth is closed,
also
by
could
the
be
way.
etiquette.
Anyway,
Chewing with your mouth closed.
I do chew with my
Some
mouth
people
closed.
don't chew with their mouth closed. I mean,
But
that's
you
etiquette.
say that my mouth is echoey or something. I don't know. Anyways, that's like nor here.
We're getting a
nor
little
there.
off. I think
We
the
are.
anointing is left
Yes,
for this
but
podcast.
like just even being aware of things that are going on around, acknowledging people.
this is another thing. Just being aware, being
Yeah.
able to read the room.
Right, like what's going on in the room? How am I in this room? And how are other people in the room? I think that's also a very that just becomes like a broader.
Another thing I'll say is just respect for people's property.
Yes, come on.
Like, I mean, I've had kids come into our home that grade me. Even though I love them, they grade me because they have no respect for personal space or people's property. And then other kids that will come in, like they're aware, like, don't poke holes in the couch. Like, that's not a cool thing to do. Don't draw on the walls or whatever. And then other kids, they don't care at all. And it's because they're not being it's a difference between those kids are being trained versus not being trained. And a lot of this goes back to disciplinary issues and whatever, but be present in your kid's life.
Be president?
Be present in your kid's life.
Be present.
Didn't I say present? I think
I
I
thought
did.
you
But
said
anyways,
president.
listen, be present in their life and then understand that you need to teach them things concerning like life skills, but then they're also going to catch a lot from you. They're going to catch more than you teach them. Mm-hmm. And so you need to pay attention to where you're at and you increase. Here's an example of a common sense thing. Let me say this. I remember my dad gave me lots of common sense in a lot of areas because I think that when he came into the Lord, he had an older man that helped him see some things because my dad's dad, my grandpa did not train my dad properly, like with hardly anything. But I remember my dad one time, this is an example of a common sense thing. There's anybody can operate in common sense, right? But you almost have to, and people say, well, common sense ain't so common anymore. It's common. When you say it's common sense, it's almost like, well, that should be without anyone having to teach you that. But you do have to teach people common sense, and you have to teach people to use it, and
Right.
then they can grow in areas to where they're better at functioning in life.
Yeah.
Here's an example that I remember very distinctly. We were driving, and I was getting ready to turn left to go across the other lane coming to make a left-hand turn. And so I had enough space that if I gunned it, hit the gas and really went, that I could make it across that without obviously the other car T-boning me. And so when I did that, my dad said, hey, let me give you a tip. And I was like probably 16. I was like, okay. He said, if you can't coast, you probably just shouldn't do it. Because what if your engine stopped right at that point or it gave out? You would want to be able to coast through there without that car hitting you. That's common sense. But he had to teach me. So now when it comes to, say, in driving in that area, I think about things like that. Most people don't think about things like that, but I do, because to me that's a common sense kind of thing. When you're, we work with tools right now. We're working with tools every day, sharp tools, powerful tools, all of that. Oh my gosh. Did I really just do that on the podcast? Yes. I grew up watching Tim Taylor, folks. I cannot believe I just did that. Maybe we can edit that out. That was really cheesy.
No, we got to leave
But anyways,
that.
When you're pulling a razor knife, you obviously don't stick your hand on the back side of it, right?
Obviously.
These are common sense things, and you have to teach your kids
to
think. You have to teach them to think for themselves.
That's actually what it is.
Most kids if they are not taught, think, son. Think here. Think about what you're doing. And there's probably better ways to say it. I haven't always said it right.
I was going to say, how many times have you said that?
You need to be able to tell them, like, hey, you need to learn to think for yourself here because that was a boneheaded move.
It wasn't
and somebody
just thinking.
Could get hurt.
Thinking all the way through.
Yeah, complete thought process.
Yes,
yeah, you realize
decision.
you need to use a utility knife to open the box, but you didn't think about where your hand was, and that's why you sliced it open, right? So... if you're going to pick up a pallet jack, obviously don't put your hand in the wrong place where it gets smashed to pieces. Not saying anyone in this room has done that, but I hope we can edit out that Tim Taylor.
Nope, it's staying in there.
That was a bit much, wasn't it?
In
it was
there.
a bit much.
And
all
with
right,
that,
we need to be done. Okay, listen, we love you guys, and we hopefully you got something that would really help you out of this in the midst of Liz and I's funny humor. It's Christmas time, and we're in a great mood.
That's right.
All right, signing off from K105 2.6. It's Kent and Liz. All right, not really. Hey, bless you guys. Love you. And we'll be back for the next podcast the next time one comes out. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Family by Design. I pray that you were blessed as you listen to the word of the Lord for your life today. I want to encourage you to go on and leave us a review and a 5-star rating. If this ministry is blessing you, go to our website at www.wartmen.org. There you can find more resources, and you can also consider partnering with this ministry. If you like what we're doing, we just pray that you would at least join us in prayer and consider supporting us financially as we take the gospel deep into the hearts of people. Gospel preached, hearts awakened, and nations reformed.